Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unscripted Pharmacist podcast. I am so excited today because here we get to talk about root cause and solution, because we've got somebody that has done the work, that has transformed his life and has acted upon what he's learned. Today we got Chris Brandlin, and this is really exciting because I feel like this solution to this chronic disease, we're getting closer, and it's going exponentially, okay? Because I think that we've got several ways that we can go about this. We can go about this just by looking at the science, which you're involved in as well, which I'm excited to talk about some of your stuff that you've been doing. But also, we can look at this from a political standpoint. Can we influence policy to make this change happen quicker, and we have less death and suffering, right? That's what this is about.
It's going to be slow but progressive changes, but I think it can be done.
Yes, yes. And that's exactly, because you are acting and you're passionate because of your results. And just like this is exciting that we've got this Casey Means, potential Surgeon General, who's gone through that transformation a lot like you. And you've got an amazing variety of, your background's amazing. It's insane the directions that you've been going in to lead you to this, right? This is it. This is kind of, I think, get towards the pinnacle of your career. I'm
certainly hoping. I'm probably going to get a lot of death threats along the way in the campaign, but that's all right. That's going to come with it. So
yes, but you're a lawyer. You've been a dietitian, right? Or a dietetics, right? You've got your MBA. You're getting your law degree, getting PhD, right? And probably most importantly, which I think is fascinating, because you've walked the talk through bodybuilding, natural bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And through that process, you've figured it out.
That's my true affinity too, is the health and fitness industry. I don't like most attorneys. I made that very clear. I made that a public statement too. I don't even think the judge liked it, but okay, it happens.
No, but you're the person that can speak on so many different levels from the standpoint of what's possible here. What can we actually do to improve health nationwide, right? I think this healthcare reform is where we're at. If she gets this appointment, you and I are gonna be like, yeah, I told you so, because sugar is toxic, and now we know. Here's the real data. So I'm so excited because here's someone that can really push this, and your testimony, your passion is from your results. You've seen this before. You've seen this in your stuff, and you know what works. So tell us a little bit about your background, as well as what are your career plans.
Yeah, well, it's going to be kind of extensive, but I'm going to put it down in a condensed summary for you, since I got better at telling the story a little bit. So as you probably know, as some others may know, I came from the health and fitness industry as a personal trainer during college. I've always been a good competitive athlete because I used to be a wrestler in high school. I did a little mixed martial arts right when I graduated high school, but then I became a personal trainer when I got into college at Cal State Long Beach, and I got really into it. But the only thing I should disclose, in college, I was a fraternity president, so I had a party life too. So that's something I need to be transparent. I'm not going to hide that. Although I was partying, I stayed in great shape. I just took it a lot more serious because in 2007, when the market crashed, I'm not sure if you remember when the market crashed in 2007, most of my friends who were getting their bachelor's degree, I was getting a bachelor's in communications, which I call it a bull crap degree for a lot of different reasons. It's just like, it's a fraternity sorority degree, to be honest with you. But all of my friends, they weren't finding any work. So when the market crashes, you don't find work. What do? I was like, I got to get some further education. Let me put myself above others. So I'm the youngest of three children. I told my father, I was like, hey, what do you think about me going to law school? Because he knew I was partying quite a bit. And he's like, he kind of just laughed at me. He's like, I doubt. His analysis was, I'm the skinnier version of John Belushi from the Animal House, that I just partied my ass off and I didn't have what it took. So I wanted to prove him wrong. So I basically, So I studied my butt off for the LSATs, and I got into a law school. But when I got into law school, I wanted to take it to a new level. I was like, look, I want to run my own business. So I took all my clients from 24 Hour Fitness with me to a private gym, and I ran my own fitness business, and it actually did very well because I started competing in all natural bodybuilding. I actually work with a registered dietitian who is still my friend today, and he actually promotes the carnivore diet as well,
Cool.
Chuck Rudolph. And he actually basically taught me about the ketogenic diet and carb cycling because when you're in your early 20s, you can almost get away with anything.
Yeah.
You can eat and drink, and you can wake up like out of 2 hours of sleep and still go to school, and the
Yeah.
hangover's not as bad. But no, I was like, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to smoke, I'm just going to basically I want to get I was like a 195-pound power lifter in college. I was I was still muscular, but I was a bigger and bulkier guy. I
Wow.
wanted to get very lean. I wanted to get down to like a lower single digit body fat percentage and, get published in magazines. And got me down, trimmed down like 155 to 3% body fat when I was competing. And that's where I won Mr. Los Angeles. I think it was about 4 different contests in a row, but the last one was Mr. Los Angeles Natural on my birthday in 2010. That got me in the Muscle and Fitness magazine, so it got me a little more publicity. But I was building my business because I had a lot of referrals that just saw that how into it. I was like a law student that was running his own business. So I ended up passing the bar exam in 2011, practicing law, still staying in decent shape. I did like some sprint triathlons after that, but right after that, I think it was like in 2015, 2016, I started getting some like autoimmune problems, started waking up with joint pain and like, just really bad fatigue and just nausea. And, it was the gut, but it was also everything else. It was like everything head to toe. And I remember I used to be a morning workout guy and I was like, man, I can't get up like at 4:30 in the morning. What the hell is wrong with me? I was like, this is bull crap. I'm like not even 30 yet. I was like, I just turned 30. And I just remember I didn't know what was wrong with me. So I did my worst mistake was I went to conventional doctors. And I never used to go to doctors before this because I used to just went to the ER room from doing a stupid stunt in college, like jumping off a roof or something like that and trying to land it. Or
Too much courage juice.
yeah, no, I actually had like I did some gymnastics like my first year of college where I learned how to do backflips. So I'd always get drunk and do backflips, and sometimes I didn't realize how much I drank. I was like, oh my God, I just broke my like I just like snapped my ankle or something like
Oh,
that. But anyways, that was my only reason for going to the doctor, was just orthopedic injuries, really,
right.
or like stitches or something
Stitches.
like that. Something simple. I never had to go into a doctor because I wasn't feeling well, so I was a little embarrassed. So, but all my family, they're like, "Oh, just go to the doctors. They're going to take good care of you." It's like, "Oh, great! I can't believe it. I just turned 30. I'm already starting to go to doctors. I feel good." And
They saw you coming, huh? They're like,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the main issue was the gut, bro. Even though I told them it was, head to toe, it was like everything was wrong, but they're like, okay, so your gut, this is what we'll do. It's probably have like some SIBO or some back, but so what we're gonna do is we're not only gonna give you antibiotics, but we're gonna give you laxatives to flush everything through. And if you're inflamed, we're gonna give you corticosteroids. And those three combinations were just a really bad kind of combination just to completely destroy your gut, incinerate your gut. So I just kept following their advice, and like every follow-ups like every month, I just kept getting worse. And it got so bad to the point of like early 2017, they referred me to a colorectal surgeon to do a colonoscopy, and they saw that one portion of my intestine was very inflamed. It was a sigmoid colon, which was like towards the very end of your intestine. And I was like, Doc, you know what? I can't even eat lately. I just in so much pain. Like first it was discomfort, but right now it is pain. It was just kind of discomfort, like bloating gas and all that from
Mhm.
certain carbohydrates I couldn't handle. And he said, no, you're gonna feel, I can guarantee you're gonna feel a lot better if we just removed about 6 inches of your intestine. The sigmoid, it's a little extended. We remove this, I guarantee you're gonna be so much better. And you know what? I was so desperate at the time where I got, I was very like, I was very, deliberately just saying, what's going to help me? Let's do it. So I was very easily manipulative at that point. So I went through for a lower intestine, a sigmoidectomy, basically a partial removal of my intestine. They said that it would be like, it would just be laparoscopic, minimally invasive, but I already knew that it was going to like a bad start to a bad storm because I actually woke up from the surgery prematurely. So that I'm not sure if they had a problem with the anesthesia, but I woke up when they were sewn up in my intestines. I woke up in extreme pain. I just started screaming as loud as I could, the entire hospital. So what they did is they gave me a bunch of drugs. I think it was tramadol and morphine to put me back to sleep. And then they released me a couple days later, even before my bowel started moving. I'm like, should I make sure this thing's moving? And I felt just so uncomfortable because, when you cut open like even though it's laparoscopic, they had like four different points around your abdomen. The main surgical scar, like 2 inches, was 2 inches below my belly button. And I remember like, that portion, it was just so restrictive and just tense. Like I couldn't sit straight up. I had to like sit up from the side because anytime you use your rectus abdominis, it was just like in extreme pain. So everything was just in my whole biomechanics. I couldn't even walk straight. It was just everything kind of like screwed up. Like your
Oh yeah.
intrinsic core muscles
What kind of
control so
surgery
much.
was this, huh? What did it do to me?
Yeah, yeah. So, anyways, kept having problems, and then it was just getting very inflamed. And then I remember a couple weeks after the surgery, I started developing a big lump, like right where in that main incision area, and it looked like a big grade. I showed the photo to some people, but it's pretty
Wow.
gruesome. It almost showed like the movie Alien from like was it the 70s or 80s with like Sigourney Weaver? Yeah, like something popping out of their stomach. I was like, because it wasn't just like it didn't look like a bloated stomach. It was 2 inches below the belly, but a big roll like grapefruit. I'm like, oh my God, what the is this? So
Right. Something's
I took
growing
it.
in
So
here.
yeah, I took some photos. I sent it to the surgeon. He's like, get to the ER ASAP. You got a major infection. We got to cut it open. No anesthesia. They didn't put me to sleep. They just literally cut it open with a scalpel. They tried to put a little bit of lidocaine and all that, but no anesthesia. I still felt everything. I just was biting my tongue as hard as I could. And they basically drained out the infection. And then they said, okay, we're not going to sew it back up. You got the infection from the inside. If we sew it back up, you're just going to be building a lot of moisture, just more, you're like a breeding ground for bacteria. So you're going to change the gauze 3 times a day. Gauze morning, afternoon, evening, and try not to get it too wet when you take a shower, try to cover it. You're going to do that like every day until it heals. And like 3 weeks later, I was keep doing it and it wasn't getting better and it started getting swollen again. Coming back, and they said, come back into the ER, cut me open again. So right there, I was like, all right, I know I should never trust a conventional medical doctor ever again. And they started still having complications throughout the year. It didn't get as badly infected, but it was still so restrictive and painful. And I told him I was still having a gut pain. He's like, well, I think, I thought we could just do it with just removing part of your intestine, but I think what we're gonna have to do, we're gonna have to remove your entire intestine. And that's where I basically gave him the middle finger. I said, no way. You have completely
You don't
ruined
need a
my
colon.
life. I used to have a very like popular social butterfly life, a great dating life, and I've been bound to a bed for the past like 6 or 7 months, and you completely made me worse with pharmaceuticals and a surgery that made me 10 times worse. Go F yourself. I'm gonna do some extensive blood work because I think something's wrong with me, and I want to look into it. But I don't trust you. And I just walked out. I said I
Right.
reviews, and they kept following up like, "Hey, we're talking about your total colectomy. We want to have a plan to get scheduled. You want to?" I said no. So I just started like, just said, "Get away from me." So,
Right.
anyways,
You're
I did some.
young and you've got insurance and
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And I did extensive blood work, and I think it showed I did have signs of Lyme disease and co-infections. I don't to this day. It was like, oh, that caused all the problems. Like, no, may have been part of the problem, but the major problem is I completely annihilated my gut with conventional medicine and pharmaceuticals. And I can tell you, I had a little bit. I could probably just, if I would have done like a 3 to 4 days fast and learned that. So what I actually ended up doing to make myself a lot better is actually even though I did short fast and before that, like 1 or 2 days, sometimes 2 or 3 days. I did an extensive fast. I did 10 days a water fast. But what I did is when I was looking into like, the GAPS diet and healing with the goat bone broth, I was like, let me just let me just eat just meat right after the fast. And I just did like a slow roasted like steak. And it was, to a point it's very soft. And it was so soothing when I refed and I felt so much better. I was like, this is like the only time I felt like really good after a fast. I was like, I think I'm onto something. So I started doing elimination diet. And I realized since my body was so inflamed, a lot of foods I was used to be able to eat, I could no longer eat. So I started eating, I was just starting different types of meats. I knew I still couldn't do eggs. I was getting a little sensitive to that. So I was just doing meats. And I spoke with some of my friends in the fit because most of my true friends are in the health and fitness industry. I was like, hey, it's kind of weird. Like I prevented like a further gut surgery. They actually cut open my intestine too many times in that one spot. I need to heal, but I can I'm only tolerating meat, and I'm not sure if I still have to detox or something. I still feel like I have something wrong with me. They're like, you may want to look into that carnivore diet. Some people think like, there's some people saying that that's all they can eat. For I was like, shit, if I only have to eat meat, then fine, let's do it. So I ended up like doing like a consult with Michaela Peterson before she became popular in
How'd you
2018.
find
And then I
her?
did another follow-up consult with Dr. Baker before he became very popular.
Okay.
Through a
Yeah.
Skype, I think it
Wow.
was Skype back then. And
You were
then
digging then.
yeah, yeah,
Tough to
exactly.
find back
So
then.
and I
This is
want to get more.
2018.
What was that
This is like
2018?
2018. Okay.
Yeah, that's when I started learning about the carnivore diet. And then I ended up going to Budapest, Hungary on Thanksgiving Day in November of 2018 because I started Skyping it with Dr. Sophia Clemens from the Paleo Medicina group. And she's been on a lot of different podcasts. But in my eyes, the Paleo Medicina group was, based on my research, they're one of the only groups that kind of like started the carnivore diet movement for medicine. There's a lot of people that have just been eating just nothing but meat just as their own practice. Like, some farmers are not.
Decades.
But she's the only one that really kind of started because she started doing clinical trials like back in like 2010 or something like that. Really early stages. But I actually stayed with them for a week and a half. I was still taking supplements, but she said, "Hey, you're not allowed to take any supplements. No vitamin C, no multivitamins, nothing. You're just gonna eat meat, fat, and salt and drink water. That's it. That's your only beverage." And she's like, "Hey," I was like, "What about prokinetics? I have scar tissue. Sometimes I have to take some herbs, kind of like move things through." She's like, "No, you're gonna have plenty of fat. You're not gonna worry about getting blocked." And she was completely right. In fact, one time I was eating their pork, I just remember that I ate too many pork fat slabs. The pork belly is from the belly, and the pork fat slabs are from the
Right.
back.
Right.
And I just remember it's really fatty, but it's really good. And because if you eat the pork from like from Hungary, it's really good. So I started eating so much fat and just went right through me. But I was like, oh my God, I didn't need to take any prokinetics. Whenever I get too bound up, I just take more fat. So
Right.
when I got back to the US, I wanted to make a huge statement. I was like, hey guys, this carnivore diet really healed me. I really want to promote this for others. And I ended up trying to do since I had my a bachelor's and associates in dietetics because I got after I passed the bar exam because I was still I was still studying after I passed the bar exam. I got my broker's license. I was like, let me give me a master's in dietetics. Let me give me something higher up. And I just remember I told the USC professors like, hey, I think meat is improperly demonized, and I think the food pyramid needs to be flipped upside down. Even though I had the best credentials, they said no, we don't like your motivation. You're suitable for as a candidate because I told them flip the food paper. So I said screw it. And right when the lockdown got started, as you can probably see me on LinkedIn talking a bunch of crap about even post locked about mask and vaccines. I am anti-vax. I'm anti-mask for a lot of different reasons. I made it like a mission that I wanted to run for Congress. So I actually, after I finished my MBA, I think it was like in 2021, right when they initiated the mandated vaccines in 2021, like in August for a lot of different states, I basically applied to get my PhD and I started the program and I'm at the tail end of the finish line since I'm in my dissertation phase right now. So yeah, my whole goal is to make some changes from our country's public health at a congressional level.
Yeah, that's okay. So how would you go about fixing this? How would you go about this
There's a
raising
lot of different
awareness?
things we could do. First of all,
Okay.
one thing I focused on, I did a podcast with Dr. Sabrina Sol last week. She's a naturopathic doctor, but she's like the carnivore functional doctor. She's really good on like, functional medicine, like stem cells, exosomes, peptide therapy. We had a huge discussion on peptide therapy, but we talked about like the problem with a lot of these studies that a lot of health insurance companies and just a lot of just the general public rely upon. They said, "Where's the studies?" Well, let's look at the clinical trials. The problem is that big pharma has like got a lot of the money into the clinical trials, so it's kind of like a monopoly with the clinical trials right now. It's because they're the only ones that can fund it, and so all these different journals, whether it's the Journal of Hepatology, Journal of like any kind of like or cardiology, that they're all leaning towards big pharma to fund the trials, and the trial is going to be based on like before and after of a pharmaceutical to show before and after, but they don't discuss all of the adverse reactions. You can see that a lot of these clinical trials are biased. So I want to kind of put a little stop to that. In addition to RFK kind of putting a stop to having too many commercials for pharmaceutical companies, I want to put restrictions on their funding for clinical trials. And since we're now finding where all of our federal tax dollars have been going to, there's disputes on whether or not we funded transgender rat surgeries or something like that for 8 million, or
Yeah.
condoms to Gaza for like 50 million. People are like, oh, that's not true. It was for transgenic
Right.
rat surgeries. Like, regardless, our money shouldn't be is going to crap. Okay, let's put money towards good studies, old fashioned, to show before and after what we can do from a meat based diet to see if we can get people off of pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
If we can actually convince the government to kind of manage it this way, they can, when people question or demonize a carnivore based diet, they can say, no, there's clinical studies and not only like thousands of testimonials showing their like before and after the results. We actually have clinical studies just showing that all their blood markers have completely improved before and after the carnivore diet without any kind of reliance on pharmaceutical medication. And they should follow strict protocols and they were observed on like a daily basis. And we could say
Right.
that he would observe that. I mean, that's just one of many. The other ones is just, like I said, I still want to flip the food pyramid upside down. It's a goal.
Yeah,
I'm
but
not sure what
I
that's going to
totally
take.
agree. There are measurable results for this stuff. I mean, there is like, hey, this person pre-carnivore had an A1C of this. I know it's a horrible
Yeah.
marker. Had this many diagnosis codes, right? This is the number of CPT codes, right? By the time that we've finished with them in 6 months, A1C has dropped, and probably most importantly, high sensitivity C-reactive protein, an inflammatory marker that shows you if you have systemic inflammation and whether or not you might be at risk for a cardiovascular event. We would see that drop in a carnivore diet.
Yeah.
We could also go, guess what? All these patients normalize their blood glucose, their average blood glucose dropped, their glucose variability, how much their blood glucose varied very much, right? Which, man, that's high energy, low energy, high energy, low energy. This is where a lot of mental illness comes from, really,
Of
because you're
course.
bouncing all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Carnivore diet, it's like watching freaking paint dry. It's like
Yeah.
it's like you eat a meal and it doesn't do anything. You carb cycle, you will
Yeah.
see it, right? You'll see this massive fluctuation. But I'm telling you, the carnivore diet is measurable, and we could be. You could do it tomorrow if you think about utilizing the data that's available, not just an A1C. An A1C is a 3-month average. It's just so archaic and it's just worthless information. Like by the time your A1C gets into diabetes range and your blood sugar is too high, your insulin was rising 7 to 10 years earlier. I think, Casey means, we're going to be like, hey, we got to measure insulin in everybody. This
Yeah.
$10 test is for everyone. Everyone has a certain level of insulin resistance, and everybody has a little bit of a too high of an insulin level. Why don't we look at it?
Yeah.
Big pharma needs to get out of this, the influence of the ADA, or we could get
Exact. Well,
really.
not just the ADA, but just the medical board, like of every
Yes.
different state too, because that's something I discussed with my client, Dr. Anthony Shafee. I've done 2 podcasts with them, and I started doing legal work from a couple of years ago. But we have all constant conversations. But our recent podcast was talking about, what conventional medical doctors are taught today in the curriculum. Basically, most of their education is based on pharmacology and not any kind of natural metabolic health or natural remedies, and very little on diet. It's pharmacology and I think like surgical procedures is most of it is what Dr. Anthony
Yeah.
Shafee does. Like, what is it going to take to change the medical curriculum? So, well, it's going to be very hard with a lot of these medical institutions because most of their funding comes from big pharma. So their funding is influence of what they're teaching to our future doctors, and I see that as being a problem too.
Are you surprised with the ads that you still see? Because I was
No,
kind of like,
I'm never
huh?
surprised because you get so used to them and you see these fake ads. And when they do, I was telling what Dr. Shafee is like, whenever they discuss like the side effects of any medication, they do it so quick.
Yeah.
Within like a period of like 10 seconds of like trying to say like 40 different side effects, but they always have a big bright smile
Yeah.
while like saying the side effects, so you can like really ignore what they're saying. The diarrhea, like liver failure, like edema, like I even told Anthony Shaffer, I was like, I think one of them even said like impotence, like you would never think that you're trying to take something for your blood pressure, all of a sudden you can't get your penis up anymore. I was like, people should know that there's some really serious risks to certain pharmaceutical medications.
Significant. Right. And what percentage of the population has this? It's not like, we're just going to go through this list. No, tell us the most frequent
Yeah,
and go,
exactly.
okay, can I handle more constipation? Probably not. Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
But how
like
many more meds I'm going to add to this?
Yeah, and no, and that's where it's kind of vague and ambiguous as to like, how common are the side effects too. Is like, all right, like let's do a study like all the people that took your medication, what is a percentage that actually had the side effects of like, like severe diarrhea or stomach bleeding or something like that.
Right. Just like the statins. I mean, their claim originally was that, this muscle breakdown, this rhabdo, as well as the brain fog,
Or
the
rhabdomyolytis or
neurologic,
something like that.
yeah, that it
Yeah.
was really uncommon. It's like a third of the patients.
I remember my friend got that from when he was doing CrossFit when in college, and I just remember he had like a big like lump like on the side of his like on the side of his ear, and he was always a short, stocky guy, and my friend Brian, and all of a sudden I remember he was training twice a day, and he was just a maniac. He trained harder than I did. That's why he's like, I got it from training too hard. I was like, really? I was like, I never heard that, but what the hell is that? I was like, you're like pregnant on the side of your to the side. Are you having a baby to the
Yeah.
side or something? It's like a lump. He's like, no, it's Rhabdo, man. They call me Mr. Rhabdo now. That's how hard I
Mr.
train.
Rhabdo.
I was
I
like,
like to dehydrate the crap out of myself and then do something
I think
insane.
that's what it was. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Like that's what I worry about these endurance sports.
yeah,
People are
no,
doing
that's
these
I
since
don't
you did
I
that for a
actually
while.
yeah, I don't do too much endurance. I used to do the sprint triathlons, but I actually right after the gut surgery, I actually tracked this down to be directly related to the gut surgery. I had a hip surgery 2 to 3 months later. My right hip laparoscopy because I remember because they said I'm not allowed to lift any heavy weights. I can only just walk. So I just want to do extra walking. But I just remember, I think when I was walking, the more and more I started having more and more hip pain. But I actually do think that since it really screwed up my biomechanics, that I was just basically just walking with improper mechanics like 24/7. I
Oh,
ended up kind of like cutting open the labrum on the interior portion of my right hip. So
wow.
I had a right, yeah, and ever since that hips, and I had a hip surgery like 2 to 3 months right after I had that gut surgery. So 2017, I was really, really messed up.
Yeah, but were you on steroids?
No, they
Okay.
gave me the corticosteroid of the cortisone basically, and they gave me that, but nothing beyond that.
But it
I
was
never.
just more acute. It wasn't like
Yeah, no,
continuous.
they never
It's like
took.
rough.
I never taken
Oh,
any anabolic. They gave me the corticosteroids, which is basically like cortisone injections and stuff like that. And
uh,
dexamethasone, I think, was one of them
yeah, yeah.
too. But yeah, but I realized it was actually it was like really screwed up with my immune system too, and that's why I never wanted to ever take those again. So I just had to be very cautious. And then, I don't demonize all pharmaceuticals. I think there are some like I do ozone therapy. I just did one this morning. So I represent a functional doctor, and he sets me up on ozone therapy. I mean, there's plenty of clinical studies to show the benefits of ozone therapy, but one thing they do include in ozone therapy is they include a little bit of heparin, so like a blood thinner. It's not as damaging as some other kind of like pharmaceuticals, but it's kind of hard to distinguish on whether all pharmaceuticals are going to be essentially bad at integrating, but I think there's probably a few that could be used as a last resort occasionally. And Dr. Schultz said the same thing, but I think we're just over prescribing just something simple. And it's over prescribing to some type of like, financial bias is like, the vaccines were the biggest issue. And people try to report me to this California State Bar and the Texas State Bar for basically speaking out against the forced vaccines. Oh, stupid.
Wow.
I mean, no, for
Yeah.
someone, yeah, I have a bias because I was completely effed up from pharmaceutical medication, right? From the
You were
danger.
still burning. Yeah, I got
Yeah,
it. You
exactly.
had a
So when
right
I
to
see
be.
them trying to force, Bill Gates, soy boobs, Billy Gates, like his pharma on us, I'm like, okay, this guy with no medical background whatsoever, no degree whatsoever, he's been known to be like specializing in computer viruses all of his life. All of a sudden wants to promote a vaccine. You guys want to think twice about taking this? No. So, and
Yeah.
my dissertation topic is actually on vaccines too, because
Yeah.
my
Tell me
public
about a little bit
policy
about that.
credential crosses over with public health.
Nice.
So
Nice.
that's why I found it pretty intriguing. But no, I want to promote a lot of other things, and I don't expect everybody to be carnivore. I spoke with Dr. Robert Kiltz about this too. He's going to be co-hosting a meetup with me. But no, we'd like everybody just to reduce, like to eat real food. You don't have to be completely carnivore. I said just remove some of the dangerous and kind of like, the high fructose corn syrup and like the
Right.
bulk up of sugar, get some more natural fruits. I don't expect everybody to throw fruits and vegetables, but you know, yeah, there's no benefits to cereals. There's no benefits to kind of like unnatural sugars and just
Right.
eat some real food. But there's very few people they want to eat these plant-based burgers now. It's just like it's like lab grown meat and now we're eating
Yeah.
crickets or something like that. I was like,
Right.
Well, this you guys should see what's going on.
We
There's an
should
agenda
try.
behind it.
I agree. Like, so you had to figure out what foods were that you were intolerant of,
Correct.
and
Yeah,
this
that was going into
elimination diet.
2018.
Maybe
Yeah.
explain how you go through that process, because I don't think a lot of people understand what is the elimination diet. I've been doing it for a while. I always notice if I've eaten something that was not the right choice.
Yeah.
Oh man, I feel it. I know when I've done it. Otherwise, man, I feel amazing. You do
Yeah.
something weird and start
You
putting
know,
the wrong
it was
thing in
weird
there.
because I always used to do some kind of I used to do fasted workouts with a little bit of coconut oil is like get a little bit of like fat right before. But for some reason the coconut oil started giving me a burning like sensation in the throat. I would never expect for coconut oil, but I just remember it just made me feel uncomfortable. Then when I tried it, when I finally ate tallow for the first time in 2018 after I spoke with Michaela Peterson, she's like, "Yeah, get some tallow." I'm like, "What the hell is tallow?" I was like, "I never heard when you look at if you've never been
Where do I
involved like
get it? What?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And they're like, "Oh, it's beef fat." I'm like, "Yeah, beef fat in a jar? Like, you got to be kidding me." I was like, "Yeah." So I finally found it like
Expensive.
Sprouts at Whole Foods, and I
Yeah.
just remember when I ate it, it was so soothing for my gut. I was like, "My God, this actually tastes pretty good." And then and then I learned that if you eat too much of it, it goes right through you. But then that's going back to like if you ever plugged up, just take some fat and salt. It's something simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I also want to I used functional medicine like I would say like peptide therapy and hyperbaric oxygen therapy and ozone therapy are some of my adjuncts I used when I wanted to be better because I was so inflamed that the carnivore diet was the main thing. But then I learned that when I was burning the candle at both ends and I'm probably doing a little too much to my body, I was like, all right, well maybe I can. I started doing hyperbaric oxygen therapy to like really help me regenerate a lot faster. I noticed the benefits of that. I did medical grade, and that's the only ones I trust nowadays. Ozone therapy is another kind of oxygen-based therapy. And then I started learning on peptides. I got into like BPC 157, and I just realized that my recovery started improving too from training.
Right.
And I have a natural tan because I use melanotin too. So I'm not sure if you know the melanotin peptide. It's really a it's actually used for kind of your skin to kind of improve your skin. And actually, I think they have some studies showing that it's been treated for skin cancer. It does have a side effect though, but it gives you a natural bronze though. That's what it does. But I told Dr. Solt it has a side effect. I didn't realize this was a side effect when I took it in 2019. It's also treated for people that have, impotence, like, for erection. So I never had that problem and I'm still not 40 yet. So it's usually for people that are like, in their 60s or older for that, they have
Not
impotence.
nowadays.
Yeah, I know, but I actually overdosed it where I took too much. And I had to go to court that day. And I told Dr. Soul, I was like, dude, this is in 2019 when I started learning on peptide therapy. I went to the Paleo FX convention in Austin, Texas, and was it Dan Strickland? He's one of the CEOs of one of the peptide companies. He's like, hey, look at you think of me as Mr. Clean. I don't get as much sun as I want, but I take melatonin. That's how I have a natural brown. I was like, man, he's got a really good tan. I got to try that out. And I actually took too much of it, and next thing I knew, I have a 24-hour hard on, and I couldn't get rid of it. So
Right. It's
someone said
it's
something
a
you have to
surge.
like
It's
go
an
to.
emergency. Oh
I
no.
know. I remember I had to go to court that day, and I was like, oh my god, it wasn't going down before I had to go to court. So I took some cold showers and wasn't. I was like, oh my god, I'll just cover it up like the whole day and stuff like that. So it was.
Wow. I didn't think this conversation was going to go that deep. I like it though.
Oh no, I'm very transparent.
I
I'm
know.
not going to be like Bill Clinton back in like with the late '90s saying like I didn't hail and what she didn't swallow or something like I forgot what he said about Monica, but no, I'll let you guys know everything. But I believe transparency is key to the function of our
Yeah.
government, right?
And I kind of think like if you researched some sort of modality that was supposed to improve your health, what do you think about what we talked about earlier about having vouchers on and say, hey, I can use this money because I've done my own research and I've
Yeah.
seen the science and I believe this to work for me. Can people like what do you think about that far as a potential policy? I mean, if we're going to have school vouchers, could we potentially do something like what you're talking about, doing IV peptide therapy?
Yeah, no, that's actually going back to like, the control of federal funding to fund clinical trials, because the only way it's
Yeah.
going to get really approved, especially for health insurance, and Dr. Solt and I spoke about that in great length about what if your health insurance companies approved, like if you get a prescription for peptides, they would actually pay for it from your policy. That would be
Yeah.
amazing. Or just paying for like a consultation with a carnivore-based like medical doctor.
Right.
That would be like reasonable. Or just one thing I really like to promote, I love, it's so basic, it's non-invasive, is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. That's
Hmm.
something because right after I had the gut surgeries, right around the time I was going to Carnivore, I developed a really bad skin condition. It's called pyoderma gangrenosum. It's kind of like a very inflammatory skin disease where your body starts getting bruises on, you started developing bruises, and then the bruises turn into ulcerations and it starts eating your skin up. So just think of it, pyoderma, derma skin,
Is this an
gangrenosum, like
autoimmune
gangrene.
thing
It's
or?
just like having gangrene on your limbs, basically. And I started getting these and I just remember that I was using carnivore that was helping, but it didn't completely fix everything. That's going to be completely honest, that I had to do medical grade hyperbaric oxygen therapy, at least 2.0 atmospheric units. I became friends with the guy that ran the hyperbaric oxygen therapy clinic. I started doing real estate work for him too, because he had some real estate disputes and all that. So I was like, hey, let's trade services. I'll be happy to handle your real estate bull crap, but
Time well
I want
spent.
to use your chamber like once or twice a week. The best I've ever felt, by the way, was in 2020. So everybody's like, hey, during your carnivore diet, you feel the best now? I'm like, no, to be completely honest with you, the best I've ever felt. And I wasn't dealing with so many death threats of going to the campaign because as you know, I have a very offensive sense of humor, so I have a lot of people that really don't like me
No,
when
I
I
love
speak
it.
out again. When I say there's only two genders, and I want to say, hey, men can't get pregnant. Sorry, guys. A lot of people really
Oh
like to
shucks.
target me for that. But no, it's 2020. I think I was doing like 2 to 3 times a week of medical grade hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I had a little bit more time back then, but I like to promote a little more clinicals because health insurance companies do approve medical grade hyperbaric oxygen therapy, but it's very narrow. I think they only tail it for like certain diabetic ulcerations and a couple other illnesses, but that should be widespread. I mean, so anybody that's
Right.
very inflamed, I mean, that should be like an automatic like approval
Right.
from your health insurance
If the
company.
outcome data supports it, why not?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
If
no,
their
and I
outcome
remember
shows 10% improvement, 25%, whatever, it's
well,
got to be better than medicine.
and that was my situation is because when I started to develop when I got diagnosed with they took a biopsy and they took it to USC because the only dermatologist he actually was a dermatologist for the PGA Tour, Dr. Jamie McDougall. He just retired a couple of years ago, but I still send him thank yous to this day because he sat me down and he did it with what a doctor should do. He said, "Look at you got this disease. I got the biopsy. It's called pyoderma gangrenosum. I know you just had your gut surgery and you got diagnosed with Lyme. And you probably have a laundry list of problems, but the skin disease, it's pretty frightening. Now, there's not going to be too much you can really do for it from a pharmacist, steroids and and antibiotics, but in like ointments. But you already know. So I'm going to recommend something, but I'm going to tell you right now, your health insurance company, Blue Shield of California, is not going to approve it." And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, no, I'm going to recommend. He learned this medical grade hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Some hospitals have it, but you probably have to go to a clinic and that had the hard chambers. You need to do this like twice a week for a couple months, literally, because that's going to be it's the only thing that can possibly. It's got antimicrobial properties when you get it to medical grade. If it goes above 2.0 atmospheric units, it becomes antimicrobial, and that's where the point creates angio vessels, where it can actually start regenerating your skin a lot faster. Trust me, your health insurance company is not going to pay for it. Just pay out of pocket and do it. This is the only way you're going to get better. I wish every doctor said exactly
What a
just like
great
he did.
advice.
Because the same thing happened. I applied for it. My health insurance company gave me the middle finger. And I just found a place in Orange County, California, and I basically started going there like religiously. I think within the first month, all my lesions basically on my arm completely went away from just hot
It's almost like if it's
or
not
funding
covered,
spent for, but
yeah.
unfortunately, we're still like tracking down where all our tax dollars went for, and that's why I think America first. A lot of our tax dollars went to other countries, and I think we're kind of depriving our own country citizens. I think that should be a huge, focus going forward.
Right. Imagine fixing chronic disease and how that would have such a financial impact on our economy and the world. It's like
Yeah.
there's so much that could be done here. Okay, so I'm going to give you an opportunity. One last thing. If you got to defend yourself, what is the one thing that, because I would love to do this too, is like, what is the one thing that people misunderstand about you? What do they mistake in you for? Because me, I'm a heretic or, conspiracy theorist. What is the one thing that if you had your chance, if you were to defend yourself,
Yeah.
what is the one thing that you think people just totally misunderstand about you?
I think a lot of people don't understand what I've been through. So a lot of people just question out when I speak out against, America first. Let's protect our schools. Let's protect our children. A meat-based diet can be healing. They just think of me as a radical conspiracy theorist. But I'm like living testimony, and I actually have all my blood tests to show before and after when I went to carnivore diet. And I actually had the PEG test, which tests the inflammation of your gut. Dr. Sophia Clemens was a few, and actually it showed like I've always had a very inflamed gut. That, not only just like the zonulin levels and everything else that you can measure, like your gut test.
Right.
Everything went completely back to normal after going to carnivore diet, and that's just living proof right there. And I'm sure you can have a lot of other people from the carnivore community just show their blood tests before and after, and like, this is living proof. This is what you guys want to put a camera on me all day to see what I eat.
Right.
My
Right.
slip is I have tequila every 2 weeks, so that's my slip, and I kind of it just makes my Saturday nights a little bit more fun sometimes. But
Right.
I have a couple shots of tequila with my steak.
Yeah.
That's my
You're
wisdom. But
living life, but
yeah,
your passion for what you're doing is because of your own personal results.
yeah. But
You're
people just
living.
think I'm a right wing conspiracy theorist. I can show them exactly what I went through, and if I show them the photos during my gut surgery, they'll never believe what I am today. And look at I'm still in great shape, so. I think, yeah, you take good care of your body, metabolic health, use your food as medicine.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Okay,
This
it's all
was
good.
fun, man. I'm back, yes, but I'm so excited to be able to do this with you. This is really fun. Hey, if I ever get down to Southern California, which I will, we got to go for a paddle. You've got the tan, you've got the perfect physique,
Or
you got
Vegas.
the stamina. I appreciate it. Everybody, take care. Thank you.